Hello and welcome to this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. I'd like to call everybody to order, and I would invite everybody to rise if you're able for the national anthem. Thank you, everyone. Please take your seats. The town of Oakville is located on treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We thank the Mississaugas for being stewards of this traditional territory. By 1820, the Mississaugas began welcoming settlers from all over the British Empire. Soon, Oakville was welcoming Black people fleeing the United States. Our indigenous white and Black residents created a community of harmony that makes us proud. By 1857, Ontario recognized Oakville as a town. At Town Hall, we fly the flag of the Mississaugas with the flags of Oakville, Ontario, and Canada to acknowledge our origins. The vibrant livability we are creating for everyone attracts people from across Canada and across the globe. We feel sorrow for acts of racism and intolerance suffered across the world, including in Canada and here at home. We want our future to be equitable and inclusive for all. We believe the path of truth and reconciliation can unite us. Please keep well, stay safe, and let us on council know of any chance to be helpful to you and yours. And please let us know anytime you can help increase Oakville's harmony, prosperity, and livability. Mr. Clerk, I understand we have no regrets for this evening. Just a member who will join us in progress. Council, are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Mr. Clerk, there are none. Council, how do you want to deal with the minutes? If you have corrections, it's time to make them. If you are happy, it's time to move and second their. Councillor Lischina, Councillor Shia, I saw you first. Thank you. Any objection to the motion? There being none, the minutes are adopted as presented. We have no public presentations, but we do have advisory committee minutes, and the Community Spirit Awards committee minutes of May 28th need to be approved. Councillor O'Meara, thank you for that. Anyone else? We need a seconder. Councillor Longo, thank you. Any objection? There being none, those minutes are approved, and the winners who were announced last week and celebrated are to be congratulated. We now have a consent agenda that has several items that are not going to be consented to. They're going to be separated for various purposes. But we have a delegation. We have a number of delegates to talk to us about 11.3, and out of courtesy for them, I thought we would turn now to 11.3 and then resume our regular agenda after we deal with that. This is the former Oakville Trafalgar High School redevelopment supplemental report that was asked for recently at council. We have 4 registered delegations, and as I understand it, Councillor Hasletiel, is there anything you want to say about what you're intending to do or move tonight, or shall we just hear the delegations?
I think we should hear the delegations, but I understand that Councillor Dudek and Councillor McNeese have a referral motion for our consideration.
Or a receipt with instructions, perhaps?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the delegations?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Anita McKee.
Ms. McKay, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and welcome. So I'm Anita Mackey. I'm a director on the Oakville Lakeside Residents Association, so representing the view of those residents. Go to the next slide. So the land, which includes the building, which was the old high school, and what is called in the master plan the Civic Square and the seniors block, it's a piece of land that is in desperate need of an expedited plan for the development. The former high school is a designated heritage building under the Act and is in danger of demolition through neglect for 20 years of it being vacant. Next slide, please. It was once a beautiful and architecturally significant building built in 1909, and as I said, it's designated under the Ontario Heritage Act. And while it has suffered greatly in the last 20 years of being vacant, it is worth saving, and we are told that it is structurally sound, which is good news because we weren't sure. Next slide, please. I wanted just to put up a picture of the school because it is a beautiful building. This is a picture from prior to 1950 when there were some additions put on the side of the school. They've been taken off. This is what remains as the heritage attributes that are definitely worth saving. Here it has its windows in, and it has the beautiful arched doorway, which now it's got blank wood in the windows and it looks a little rough, but you can see what it could be and could be brought back to be. Next slide, please. So there are a few levers that impact the redevelopment of this land, and that would create an outcome that has more certainty of outcome, execution, and retention of the value and the contribution to the surrounding community. And there are a few questions to be answered. So should the lands be transferred to the Oakville MDC? Should there be flexibility in the requirements from the master plan, any of the Civic Square, the seniors residential block, the retention or restoration of the heritage building, the zoning and height recommendations for the current 4-story limit? What should the conditions and the process be for the development of this land if Oakville MDC is used as a master developer? And how do we deal with the chimney swifts? Next slide, please. So involving the MDC could be a good step if the right conditions are added to ensure the outcome. We think it is critical to require the restoration of the heritage building. And any transfer to the MDC must have this condition and other conditions outlined later in this presentation. The flexibility that might be added to attract bids for the property should be in the loosening of the requirement for a civic square, thus making more land available for development, and in the type and height of building, i.e. no longer requiring seniors housing, as there's plenty of seniors housing currently being built in Oakville, and that maybe wasn't the case when the master plan was first developed. Next slide, please. The current height restrictions of 4 stories could be loosened up to maybe 6 stories near the parking garage on the north side, while stepping down to 3 or 4 stories near the Heritage Building and the Allen Street frontage. A developer will worry about the actual cost of restoring a heritage building of this age, and that has probably been a real drag on the progress of this development. Next slide, please. In order to make this development more attractive, it could be structured as a 2-step process. So step 1 could be to sever the lands and go out with phase 1 without the heritage building, but include what is now the Civic Square lands in that building request. Have the restrictions on design and height, as set out above, could be up to 6, but there'd be parameters on that about where that extra height could be. Then step 2 could be have the town or MDC use the proceeds of the sale from step 1 to start restoring the heritage building and design an adaptive reuse with another or same developer. Example, there could be purpose-built rentals with funding from the CMHC. That's where a lot of the money is coming for development right now. Or a future meeting space for nonprofits, or an organization like Home Sweet Hope, which provides housing for very well-vetted women and their children who need a leg up. Or there are just countless examples of good adaptive reuse that has been done in Ontario with heritage buildings, old schools, old churches, and they've been very successful. And then this could involve a second sale to a developer with proceeds going back to the town. And even if the town thinks that maybe we don't need space now, guaranteed we will. And I think a heritage building is an exception to not having too much excess capacity. I think if you build it, they will come. I really believe the old adage. Next slide, please. So the bottom line is that we need to be creative. We need to act fairly quickly as the heritage building is deteriorating. The restoration of the building will add value: financial, community, civic, pride, historical connection. We need some flexibility to attract developers while retaining control over what is most important. And as I said, the adage from Field of Dreams is, if you build it, they will come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mackey.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Duddick had her hand up. I didn't see it till the last second.
Thank you. Well, to use another adage from Jerry Maguire, you had me at hello, okay? Thank you very much for your presentation. You actually focused on exactly the ones that we're trying to incorporate in the motion that we'll table. But I think one of the biggest aspects that is lacking thus far is to broaden the consultation and the input from the broader community versus just Ward 3. Even though it's located in Ward 3, it's something that all of the town is very appreciative and wants to retain. So thank you very much.
Agree with you, thank you.
Councillor Duddick, in that spirit of consultation, would it be okay for us to put on the screen the motion that you're intending to bring? That way, when people delegate, if they want to speak to it, they would have an opportunity. Maybe we'll even give Mrs. Mackey a chance. Can you? Councillor, would you like to, maybe you could read it out.
Okay, it's not a referral. We're actually just going to receive the report, so there will be no action taken from that. That this item be received and the following be undertaken. The council directs the Municipal Development Corporation undertake a process for the hospital lands in the former Oakville Trafalgar High School, OTHS, site with the broader development community with consideration of the following: the preservation and adaptive reuse of the former OTHS, retaining a heritage designation and its rich history within the social and culture of Oakville, the provision of a public gathering space immediately in front of the former OTHS building, the implementation of a safe and appropriate alternative habitat strategy for the chimney swifts, consistent with applicable environmental requirements prior to any disturbance of existing roosting habitat. A broader range of housing forms, including purpose-built rental with the official plan's medium density designation, recognizing the physical context and existing development within the surrounding area and ensuring appropriate built form transitions, setbacks, and step backs to adjacent residential areas. Town staff, in parallel, explore potential opportunities to support the development, inclusive of adaptive reuse and potential funding sources, including public consultation with the results brought back to council no later than Q1 2027. town staff, as stewards of the former OTHS building, ensure that all necessary maintenance is completed in preparation for the upcoming winter season, and that the building and surrounding property are cleaned up this summer and maintained as development is advanced, and that any information from the confidential over 500-page report that is not prejudicial to the town's ability to dispose of the property be made available to the public. And Councillor McNeese has very kindly seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. At the very least, Anita, you've got to feel like you were psychic, or they were, one or the other.
Well, that's wonderful. I think that's terrific. And I would maybe ask if they could add consideration of a two-step process and potentially severing the land so that we could deal and have a little bit more control over the adaptive reuse of the property and its restoration. But other than that, I'm very supportive.
I'm sure that that'll be part of the work. The broader request includes the minor ones. Mr. Clerk, could you call the next delegation?
Jane Hockrig.
Ms. Hockrig, welcome. It's good to see you. We look forward to your information.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Delighted to see what was just put up. My name is Jane Hockrig, and I live at 65 Navy Street in Oakville. 291 Reynolds Street, which is the high school, and the lands extending east to Allen Street, is an address with a story with a rich and compelling history, a very sad presence, and the potential for an exciting and innovative future. What we're talking about tonight is public land, and the last piece of a puzzle whose vision was developed as part of a very broad public master plan consultation process. Despite everyone's frustration about how shamefully this public property has been allowed to deteriorate, it's still my view that it has significant community value. As such, it deserves our collective attention as opposed to just throwing up our hands because it's been so long and delegating it to a non-elected body for planning and development. At the heart of this remaining puzzle piece is the Oakville Trafalgar High School, which was built between 1908 and 1909. Even back then, developers took time to accommodate a growing and vibrant small town, the place that we call home. Graduates include World War I and World War II veterans who sacrificed for our country, famous people like Maria and Otto Jelinek, Haggard Hardy, Sandra Post, Doug Henning, Larry King, and the thousands of others who are just proud to say that they are OTHS grads. The school's legacy is deeply intertwined with the growth and development of Oakville in the last century, symbolized by its Latin motto, no reward without effort, and the coat of arms representing learning, hard work, and community ties. No reward without effort. How fitting to tonight's discussion. And the three words that I think are particularly relevant: learning, hard work, and community ties. I sincerely appreciate that the surrounding neighbors are done with this mess and they want to get things going. Shame on all of us for taking so long and the neglect of this cherished cultural heritage building. I think this is the moment when we must be courageous and pause. We've got a last chance to get it right. It's our land, our heritage, and our history. If we don't get it right, what could be special about this site will be gone forever, and that will rest on all of our shoulders, including this council. The challenge from my perspective is threefold: value, heritage, and transparency. The first challenge for me is value. The May 12 staff report states that nonprofit builders were not pursued due to council's direction to maximize the value of the property. I have been unable to find any direction on what council means by value. This is not an empty, publicly owned field that was used to store the town's utility equipment and is now surplus, like further north on Trafalgar Road. This is a publicly owned property in the heart of Old Oakville, an historical residential neighborhood that reflects the growth of our town in the 1900s. In this context, What does value mean for this specific site? For me, it's not just economics. It's an and the and is cultural. This site is foundational to our growth in the 1900s as a small town. If we lose the high school building and its streetscape, it's just another street. It's just another development. No story, no history, no special. Best practices associated with successful adaptive reuse of heritage buildings highlight the need for a shift from conventional real estate models driven solely by profitability to strategies that prioritize cultural value and structural adaptability. Without alignment as a council on how you define value for this specific site, how can you provide direction, set boundaries, and identify viable partners to develop this site in the way it deserves? Second challenge is heritage. The May 12 staff report confirms that the Oakville Trafalgar High School has been consistently identified as a cultural and visual anchor within the community, and that the master plan deliberately positions the building within a broader civic precinct. It acknowledges that the master plan envisions the adaptive reuse of the building, a designated Part 4 cultural heritage resource. Our official plan clearly states that Council's objective is to conserve heritage resources through available powers and tools, and that all new development and any site alteration conserve cultural heritage resources. I am very concerned that one of the non-financial objectives, as stated in the report, is to work with town staff to preserve a portion of the building and certain heritage components, including the facade. The implication is that facade is heritage conservation. I'm sorry, but it's not. The national standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada emphasizes retaining as much of the authentic material and spatial configuration of a designated building. Facadism destroys heritage authenticity and should not be a default strategy for adaptive reuse. On the assumption that it is structurally sound, the direction should be to conserve and restore this importantly publicly owned Part 4 building for adaptive reuse and to work with partners who will share that vision. Increasingly, adaptive reuse of historic buildings is being valued as it keeps the spirit of a place alive. Studies have shown that heritage conservation contributes to community identity, stability, and pride. When people can encounter historic buildings as part of their daily life, as their library, their market, their apartment building, their community center, or their office, it creates a link to the past that enriches the present. The stories embedded in the brick and beam remain part of the community's ongoing story. The third challenge is transparency. The June 9th staff report suggests that one of the goals of the recommendation is to provide the Oakville MDC with more flexibility in dealing with OTHS and the Civic Square, and to change their role from broker to managing the disposition process. To me, delegating planning and development authority to an unelected body on such an important site is inappropriate without clear direction from council. And I fail to understand why information regarding the heritage assessment, the building assessment, and provincial requirements regarding the accommodation of the chimney swifts is confidential. Why not have all the facts on the table for everyone, including the public and interested parties, to see? I think we need to go slow over the coming months in order to go fast in 2027 under a newly elected council. In closing, 291 Reynolds Street and the lands extending east to Allen is a story with a rich and compelling history. As we move forward to complete this puzzle and develop this remaining part of the site, let's embrace the school's motto, no reward without effort. An investment now can enable a future site that we can all be proud of. And I believe that with effort, it can be done at pace. At this time, I am not in support of the staff recommendation to transfer the property to the Oakville MDC based on the principles that they set out in their report. I would urge this council to do more in establishing the principles and direction for development of this site, including zoning, housing options, civic space, and the conservation and restoration of the designated Part 4 school building for adaptive reuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hochberg. Councillor Dunick and Councillor Hazard-Thiel have questions for you.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Thank you very, very much, Jane, for coming out. It's understandable why you and Francine Landry were chosen to co-chair our 150th anniversary celebrations. And I do recall us speaking at length at that time about the importance of conserving and preserving this site given our town's history. So thank you for the stewardship you brought forward.
Thanks, Kathy.
Councillor Hazard-Thiel.
I don't have much to
Dunick,
add,
Yes.
other than to say thank you for staying up late or the early morning. It was outstanding, and thank you for always bringing the heart.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you, Ms. Hochberg. Mr. Clerk, the next delegation.
Hugh Murray.
Mr. Murray, welcome. Council looks forward to your presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Hugh Murray, and I'm presenting tonight on behalf of the Trafalgar Chartwell Residents Association. I think it's important to acknowledge that this delegation had its roots in a meeting on this subject that was organised by Councillors Hazlitt-Thiel and Giddings last Wednesday at the community centre. We realised there were two very sharply contrasting viewpoints on the subject of the disposition of the school. The school's in our neighbourhood, and it seemed that our duty was to come here and represent both of those viewpoints. The presentation was built from the town report and its suggestions. There was a suggestion, four options, and option number 4, which was the restoration of heritage elements. And it was also built on the notes we took at Wednesday's meeting, as well as several representations we have since received by email from our members on both sides of this issue. Next slide, please. The 1909 Oakville Trafalgar High School is a designated heritage structure. That designation reflects a formal community decision, one made by a previous council, that this building's place in Oakville's history is worth protecting. For many of our longest serving members, that building is not just a structure, it is a landmark tied to the memory of the town as it was. So our association does support option 4, the partial heritage retention, as the recommended path forward, hoping that council considers the issues we are about to raise, we're about to outline. But before we speak to the differences, let us be clear about what unifies all of us and everyone at that meeting, because the common ground is significant. The status quo of 34 years of neglect is unacceptable and unconscionable. Any path forward should come with accountability, and the site needs attention now, regardless of any long-term decisions that are made by the council. Next slide, please. But option 4 involves a complex P3 process, land transfer to Oakville MDC, a public search for a development partner, and then negotiations in which that partner must satisfy multiple layered requirements: heritage retention, seniors housing, a civic square, pedestrian connections, and height and density limits. Some of our neighbours worry costs rise, developer interest narrows, timelines slip, and the neighbourhood continues to live beside an eyesore while negotiations drag on. There is also the matter of chimney swift habitat in the building, which adds provincial regulatory complexity that could further delay construction. We raise this view because council should know it exists and because it reflects a real frustration that deserves acknowledgement and not dismissal. Next slide, please. Whether you share the heritage perspective or the pragmatist perspective, our association would respectfully ask council to consider 3 things. First, clarifying what the heritage elements mean before the land transfer in consultation with Heritage Oakville. We'd suggest the front facade, visible from the street, as one obvious starting point. Second, treating the civic square and pedestrian connections as firm commitments, not aspirational goals. And we'd welcome council exploring whether the civic square could be designed to frame and draw attention to the facade, so the two ideas would reinforce each other. Third, a sense of timeline with an opportunity to revisit the matter together if a development agreement isn't reached within a reasonable period. We'd suggest something like 24 months. Again, clarifying what heritage elements means is important because we feel at the moment it hasn't been well defined. Next slide, please. A development partner will not break ground tomorrow, and the process will likely take years. We would be grateful if council could consider funding in the next budget cycle 2 modest measures: basic grounds maintenance and fencing, and targeted structural stabilization, enough to help prevent further visible deterioration, but well short of the full rehabilitation estimates. Our neighbours have lived beside this site for over 30 years and would welcome any improvement council can make now in the short term. Next slide, please. We came here tonight representing a community that doesn't fully agree with itself, and we think that's worth saying out loud. This is a hard decision with real trade-offs, and reasonable people see it differently. What we share is a belief that Oakville can and should do better by this site and by the neighbourhood around it than it has for the past 3 decades. We hope council will weigh these considerations in that spirit. A fully written summary of the conflicting opinions that we registered at the meeting has been distributed to you, Mr. Mayor, and all of the council members. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hugh. Kathy Duddick has something for you. She's right over here.
Through you, Your Worship. Right over here.
Oh, okay.
Just thank you very much for coming out, and thank you for articulating some of the issues that we have identified, namely the lack of information for the public in regards to the heritage attributes. And as Jane had mentioned in her presentation, a full disclosure of the reports that we've got to educate the public as to those very keen attributes and the site itself. I also appreciate the sensitivity you used in terms of some people being in close proximity have a different view than maybe some of the rest of the community who do not. And while I applaud both Councillor Haslett-Thiel and Councillor Giddings for hosting the event recently, the broader community has not had an opportunity to participate and comment. So I appreciate your willingness to afford that to unfold. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hugh. Mr. Clerk, the next delegation.
Terry Murphy.
Welcome, Ms. Murphy. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you and good evening. My great aunt attended Oakville High School the year it opened, beginning a 4-generation-long connection. But even Oakvillians who are not alumni see OT as a source of community pride. The building is testament to the town's exceptional contribution to the development of education in Oakville, Ontario, and indeed Canada. A facade, figuratively associated with false appearances, is insufficient. Oakville's pioneers did everything they could to teach their children at home and train them in a family trade, but they knew a good school could help their children become more successful, contributing members to society. So they built our first school in 1828 and hired Dr. William Tassie as their first teacher, who would go on to educate future leaders with names like Tupper, Blake, Mowat, Osler, and Galt. After the 1837 rebellions, Canada's leaders wanted to avoid further violence. For Lord Durham, who came to investigate what would lead to a better, more peaceful society, education was key. He said, Much of the province has neither roads, post offices, mills, schools, or churches. The people may raise enough for their own subsistence, but they cannot prevent their children from growing up ignorant and occupying a far lower position than they themselves fill. Or the lands originally appropriated for the support of schools, the most valuable portion has been diverted. So even in the most thickly peopled districts, there are but few schools, and those of a very inferior character. Based on his advice, 1841 brought the Common School Act, the foundation for Ontario's free school system. It was Oakville's own Reverend Robert Murray who served as Assistant Superintendent of Education and played a major role. Soon after, the brick two-story Central School opened with 190 students just north of the original schoolhouse. It's good to remember that, like most buildings in pre-Confederation Oakville, the first school was not demolished, but reused to house the town's new fire engine. New legislation soon allowed Oakville to levy taxes, so high school, then called grammar school, would no longer be just for the elite. Oakville's leadership influenced Canada's development of free public education. According to Hazel Matthews, Council took immediate action to secure it, and in 1854 approved an extension to Central School. By 1870, all grades were free, and Council approved another $4,000 extension. This grand building, built by local contractors Gels and Molds and furnished by the renowned Jakes and Hay, was the county's first 1 to 13 school. The founding of St. Mary's in 1860 was another chapter. In 1861, 19,000 people lived in Hamilton with only 3 schools. Over 44,000 in Toronto with only 7. And Oakville, with 1,400 people, had one. I jumped. Through tax dollars and donations, Oakville built the first separate school in all of Halton, Dufferin, and Peel counties, one of the first in the province, and played a role in the development of Section 93 of the BNA Act. St. Mary's earned historic importance again when Bill 141 required instruction in French, and École Sainte-Marie opened in that same building, the second Francophone school in Halton. In 1909, most Oakvillians were far from affluent, but they saw Oakville High as central to a good future for their children. Known for its high academic standards and graduating alumni who have become famed business, sports, arts, and public service leaders, the school became a community center where youth played sports and where the Assembly Hall provided space for community musical and dramatic events. As an executive member of a community arts group, we are always looking for more indoor places to perform aside from Oakville's churches and the center. Then there is the architectural design by famed architect A.H. Chapman. In 1907, he designed Toronto's Central Reference Library on College. The very next year, Chapman and McGiffin designed Oakville High. And then in 1909 and 1915, they designed the Carnegie Libraries in Dundas and Barrie, today proudly repurposed as art galleries. Their 1913 Old Mill Tea Room is still a lucrative private destination. Chapman's other beautiful structures are many and various, including the ROM, the Sunnyside Bathing Pavilion, and the CNE's Princess Gate. They are, as CBC's Johnny Harris would describe, still standing in proud celebration of our Canadian stories. These achievements would be deserving of recognition on their own, but perhaps even more significant is how this building represents the sacrifice of Oakvillians for what they deemed so important for over 200 years. It began by them moving the town's first cemetery. Much later, many students would sacrifice their lives in both world wars. Here, First Principal W.B. Wyndham planted gardens tended by school farmerettes to assist the war effort. At great personal sacrifice, Mr. Archibald, principal during the Second War, did everything he could to keep up morale despite the sorrow of his only son being killed in action in 1941. For years, students marched from the school to George's Square to remember. More recently, Oakville residents have made sacrifices through a long and patient wait to ensure that this heritage structure would be retained and restored, as discussed in the 2013 land study. Fire tragically destroyed many of Oakville's earliest buildings, but then the landmark Central School was demolished in 1960. The only other pre-Confederation building aside from St. Andrews was the Temperance Hall, and despite its being the oldest in Ontario and its service as a meeting place for everything from the first council meetings to art exhibits, fundraisers, bazaars, and even agricultural fairs, it was demolished in the mid-60s with much regret following. In 1986, St. Mary's was wastefully demolished. That was done by the church. There is no other large public building of significance to state in Oakville aside from the churches. There will not be another opportunity. The May 26 recommendation before council speaks of increasing the value of the property. The question was raised at last Wednesday's Ward 3 Let's Talk as to what the town understands as value. The report states the main goal is to maximize financial profit, but this ignores the value of this vital cultural and community resource. Through public consultation and council direction, the site has been consistently identified as a cultural and visual anchor, and the report underlines council's objective to conserve cultural heritage resources on the register and ensure all new development and any site alteration conserve these resources. Given the cultural value of this Ontario heritage building, conservation of the whole is essential. Critically, the report repeatedly affirms that despite disrepair, the structure remains structurally viable and that there is merit in rehabilitating for a variety of uses. The recommendation states that the property is surplus to town needs, but even with the building of a community centre in Midtown, with the growth anticipated, many more resources will be needed. The School Law Improvement Act of 1871 required area classrooms and a half-acre school site with a fenced playground. The couple of elementary-only schools planned for Midtown will have no playground, but share a public park instead. A beautiful building set in a canopied neighborhood with a civic square just a short walk away would be a valuable community resource and far from surplus. Yes, it will require a creative builder, and yes, money must be found. While to date, a joint venture partner has not materialized, very significant resources in Oakville and the surrounding area have not been optimally engaged, with the general population largely unaware. Repurposing will cost, but so would erecting a new 20,000 square foot building. The financial and green costs to demolish, remediate, and integrate even minimal heritage will be extremely high, so the differential closes significantly. At last week's Let's Talk, creative strategies were raised by financially prudent citizens. In addition to finding a partner, considerably more housing could be built to mitigate the loss. The size of the proposed square could be greatly reduced by keeping only the land in front and a smaller pedestrian walk. There could be slightly more density than originally planned through this extra land and a stepping down in height from the building to the north and east. As well, more land for development might be possible if the square replaced the Allen Street open space, worth considering given neighbors' comments about its poor maintenance with vegetation and benches that apparently foster problems. Also, a development geared to seniors, a carryover from when the hospital-owned land was promised for continuing health-related services, is no longer mandatory. Mixed use for all ages seems to be what people want. Other creative ideas, including keeping the chimney swifts as an enclosed attraction on site, rather like the bee colonies at Oakville Place and formerly the ROM. Option 3 is the best choice. Interim stabilization could provide short-term relief at the relatively minimal cost of mowing the front lawn and making minor cosmetic repairs to the facade during an all-out community-engaged search for a funding partnership and a creative developer with the incentive of more land. Having attended countless meetings over the whole Midtown process, I am deeply appreciative to Council for your hard work and commitment to a livable Oakville and a renewed commitment to heritage. Please do not miss this opportunity to do something really spectacular and innovative that respects our community and its history and saves this unparalleled heritage resource. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. You have, if you just linger a moment, Councillor Giddings.
And catch your breath as well. Thank you so much for coming out and for joining Councillor Janet and I last Wednesday. You brought history and heritage to life. And you do that so well on so many areas of the town, but we especially thank you for this one and for bringing up points that Dan Chelikoff raised so well and was not able to be with us this evening. So for that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. All right, Council, I'll confine at the table. We have a mover and seconder of a motion we have exhibited. And Councillor Dudek, you first. I have an indication that there's others who may want to speak. Councillor Dudek.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's pretty well self-sufficient in terms of the submissions thus far in the motion. I would also move the confidential report at the applicable time, and I believe Councillor McNeese will second that, rather than going in camera, as we have endeavored to have as much of that available for the public to be able to review, consider, and be educated. I do want to thank my colleagues, Councillor Haslett-Dion and Councillor Giddings, for all their efforts in this regard. A very tough position to be put in that, as the gentleman from Trafalgar Chartwell cited, it's sort of some people are of one mind and some people are of another. And to adequately represent your constituents, you've done a stellar job in that regard. So thank you very much. And to all of those who've come out, who continue to come out to advocate for this important site, thank you so much.
Councillor McNeese.
Thank you, through your worship. Not much else to add to the delegations and my council colleague here, but certainly it's not just a ward issue, this is a town issue. And once that building's gone, it's gone forever. It's got such a legacy in our town. So being the heritage representative, myself and Councillor Longo, this is something that is of great importance to the town as a whole. So I'm happy to second this.
Thank you, Councillor McNeese. Councillor Elgar.
Mayor Burton, you have a recorded vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Of course we can. Councillor Haslett-Dion.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. I want to thank the delegates, but I also want to thank our community that came out. It was a last-minute request to show up at a Let's Talk with about 5 days or less notice, and you turned out, and I think we had some meaningful discussion, and as appropriately explained in one of the delegations, we all learned about appreciating the diverse views that exist in our community and the need for other people to become more informed about the heritage designation and what is the potential. I did hear some things that were positive at the meeting. There was a lot that supported protecting the open space in front of the school. There were those that respected the context of the surrounding neighborhood and whatever we develop. There was general agreement that land should not be restricted to a single demographic and that the mix of housing opportunities should be explored within the density framework already contemplated. But of course, there was no consensus on what the future of the school should be. And for some residents, it was pretty straightforward, get on with it. And for others, heritage matters deeply. And as Councillor Duddick said, it's hard to try to understand both sides, and yet that's our obligation. I've had the joy in the last few days of digging deeper into the history of Old OT. I made my visit at 8:30 in the morning on Friday to get my reading material from George Chisholm at the Oakville Historical Society, and I'm grateful for him giving me the yearbooks and several books to read over the weekend. Old OT is not just a former high school. It was a community hub. It educated generations of Oakville residents and occupies a special place. When council designated the building under the Ontario Heritage Act, previous councils recognized its significance and accepted a responsibility to protect it. For many residents, Old OT is also a place of remembrance. The school's history is connected to generations of Oakville families whose sons gave up their lives and left school early in some instances, including our former mayor, Harry Barrett, I understand, to serve in the World War. Some never came home. Remembrance is not something we observe only on November the 11th. It is reflected in how we care for the places and stories that connect us to those who came before us. And for many residents, the history is one of the reasons adaptive reuse deserves serious reconsideration. Value cannot just be how much the land is worth. It must be the value we place on community, heritage, and connection, as it was strongly conveyed by some of tonight's delegation. It's also about stewardship. As a municipality, we ask owners of designated heritage properties to care for and maintain them. I think residents can reasonably expect the town to demonstrate that same commitment when we are the owner. A resident recently reminded me that council's role is oversight, and the challenge in our prior process is that was difficult because at times we did not have all of that information. But I will say I'm very grateful that the staff quickly turned around gathering a consolidated report of 500 plus pages to share with us on the history and the heritage designation, on the structure, on the chimney swifts, on the different assessments that have been done over time. And good work was done, but we failed to get it across the finish line. What I take from the information is that it's not that adaptive reuse is impossible, but it will be a challenge, and we must align resources and facts to make that final decision. And so I support what's being proposed tonight. It is a commitment to finding out and learning and exploring. Is there an opportunity within the development community? How can we make this possible? Can we preserve and adaptively reuse a designated heritage building while delivering the housing? Can we respect the neighborhood while creating a viable project? Can we identify funding opportunities related to heritage conservation, sustainability, housing for adaptive reuse? Can we create an intergenerational community that strengthens this part of Oakville? Those are questions worth asking before we make irreversible decisions. Thank you to my council colleagues for putting this motion forward tonight. I'm prepared to support a process that gathers greater public input, tests the market's interest, encourages the market's interest, identifies potential funding opportunities, and really reaches out and does the hard work, which was part of the motto of Old OT. Finally, while this work is underway, I believe we owe something to the neighbors who've lived beside this property, and it has to be more than a whippersnip. The grounds should be maintained. The building needs to be protected from further deterioration, and regardless of the outcome, that's just simple good stewardship. So I'm hopeful that we can agree on tonight's motion and that after 11 years of town ownership, we can do what's right by this building, these lands, and see what was a wonderful master plan come to life.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers? Very well. Mr. Clerk, would you call the vote?
Councillor O'Meara? Yes. Councillor McNeese?
Yes.
Councillor Duddick?
Yes.
Councillor Chisholm?
Yes.
Councillor Howsett-Thiel?
Yes.
Councillor Giddings?
Yes.
Councillor Elger?
Yes.
Councillor Longo?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes.
Councillor Grant?
Yes.
Councillor Adams?
Yes.
Councillor Lushina?
Yes.
Councillor Nanda?
Yes.
Councillor Shi?
Yes.
Carried.
That carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Now, I want to put that over there. And now I'm advised that, so we're now turning to the section 9 of the agenda and the consent agenda. I'm advised that 9.1 needs to be separated and that 9.4, yes, 9.4 needs to be separated. And I will, out of optimism, ask for a motion for 9.2 and 9.3. Councillor Grant and Councillor McNeese, thank you. Any objection? There being none, 9.2 and 9.3 are consented. Councillor Grant, you have the floor for 9.1, the Sunningdale Public School tennis courts.
Just very briefly, I think I've not had a conversation with the Parks Department in the last 10 years where I've said, so what about Sunningdale? What are we gonna do about Sunningdale to get the tennis courts up to standard for the community? And so I'm just very pleased that it's worked so well after years and years of our persistence. And I'd like to thank Chris Mark and his team for getting us to a point where we've now got more and more of the parkland in College Park back in the hands of the community where we can at least take better care and better stewardship of the lands. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. It won't happen until somebody moves and seconds it. Councillor Grant moves it, Councillor Adams seconds it. Is there any objection? There being none, that's carried. And before we turn to 9.4, the clerk bids me mention, when I said the balance, that also includes 9.5, just to be clear. So then 9.4, Councillor McNeice, I believe this is your mission. If I'm wrong, arm wrestle over there.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe we do have some delegation. Would you like me to put forward the referral motion first, or? Oh.
I think it's a favor to delegations to know what they're talking about, and if you're deviating from what's, if you've improved on the public report, let the public know.
Okay. And is there a delegation, or sorry, is there a presentation from staff on this one, or is it just the staff? I guess just the staff report.
It's a consent item, sir.
Correct. Okay.
So the clerk will put your
Put it on the
motion
screen.
up,
Perfect.
and then you can read it.
And I did send a formatted version. I think the original was a little off, but
Well, when we get it up, you can tell us if you've got the one you want.
beautiful.
Does this look like what you wanted?
It does, yeah. So this is moved by myself and Councillor Longo. And it's that item 9.4, review of the effectiveness of towing without the vehicle owner's consent by law 2024-187 be deferred to the council meeting of July 6, 2026, and that staff be directed to report back at the July 6th meeting on options to eliminate or modify the authority of municipal law enforcement officers, or MLEOs, to request tows within business improvement areas, BIA districts, such that tows could only be authorized in parking lots in BIAs by town MCOs or municipal compliance officers, recognizing the unique role of BIAs as a tourist, visitor, shopping, dining, and community destination, and to provide any associated bylaw amendments for council's consideration. In that the notice of the July 6th council meeting and the potential revisions be provided to affected stakeholders. And part 2, that staff be directed to report back to council within 1 year on amending the towing without the vehicle owner's consent bylaw 2024-187, including a review of comparative municipal approaches to managing private property parking enforcement and towing, and whether different towing practices are used for different areas of a municipality, such as a BIA. Part B, measures to improve deterrence and reduce reliance on towing, including alternative parking management and enforcement tools for areas experiencing institutional spillover parking, tourist destinations, and BIAs. C, opportunities to improve transparency for the public, including signage requirements, property boundary identification, and enforcement visibility at high-volume towing locations. D, whether variations in enforcement practices, waiting periods, who can authorize tows, or other bylaw provisions may be warranted to reflect differing land use contexts in Oakville, such as different practices, waiting periods, and who can authorize tows or other measures in BIA or near hospital situations. E, consumer protection measures, including the role of MLEOs in authorizing tows and the use of officers as spotters, and whether towing should be reserved for repeat offenders in certain circumstances. F, performance measures, reporting mechanisms and technology solutions to better track, monitor, and evaluate private parking enforcement and towing activity. And finally, G, recommendations for any further amendments to the bylaw if warranted.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Clerk, would you call the registered delegations?
Kylie Wilson.
Ms. Wilson, welcome. Council looks forward to your reaction.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. It's nice to see you all again. In light of what's just being presented, I feel like my delegation does have quite a narrow scope, but I will go into it just to provide you with a little bit of Bronte context, as I do. We're representing our local Bronte Village business community this evening, and I do thank you for the opportunity to speak once again about towing and Bronte Village. I approach this opportunity with a strong sense of responsibility because the towing issue in our community does continue to have a significant impact and really impact the social and economic health of Bronte. And I hope my comments reflect what we continue to hear while also addressing, the amendment that is in front of council this evening. The towing bylaw, as you know, intended to introduce important safeguards, including signage requirements, defined property boundaries, a mandatory waiting period before towing, and municipal oversight. And these measures were intended to balance property owners' rights with the fairness for motorists who are visiting our communities. And as you know, the question before council tonight is not whether those safeguards were worthwhile, but whether we actually have enough information to conclude that the current system is achieving the balance that you intended, and whether now is the appropriate time to remove the safeguards that were built into the bylaw. Next slide, please. Thank you. The staff report makes clear that this program is very much still evolving. Participation continues to grow, more properties are entering the system, and enforcement activity continues to increase. Staff also noted that activity is not expected to stabilize until 2028, so several more years of elevated demand anticipated. And taken together, these indicators show a system that is still expanding rather than one that has reached a steady state. Next slide, please. I recognize that the report shows a low denial rate for tow approvals and few complaints regarding MLEO conduct. That does suggest that the current process is functioning as intended, and that most requests are being handled appropriately. But those figures reflect performance under the existing oversight, and they don't demonstrate what the system would look like without that requirement. The key question is not whether MLEOs have acted appropriately to date, but whether there's enough evidence to conclude that the approval requirement is no longer necessary. And given continued growth in the program and the expectation that activity won't stabilize for another 2 years, I don't believe we're working from a mature enough data set to make that determination with confidence. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to bring a little Bronte perspective. We have seen a significant increase in enforcement activity at one local property. That location now represents the second highest volume of tow approval requests in Oakville, with 183 requests during the reporting period. Based on the information that's available to our BIA, and certainly as evidenced in my inbox and with my phone ringing, the current enforcement model at this location appears to have been implemented fairly recently. So if the data before council likely doesn't reflect a full season, and it definitely doesn't reflect what will be our busy season in Bronte this summer. And that really matters because council is being asked to consider reducing oversight while the highest volume sites may still be in the early stages of operating within the system. So at the same time, we continue to hear concerns from residents and visitors about the substantial costs associated with towing, often several $100s once all fees are included. And regardless of the circumstances that led to the tow, these experiences shape public perceptions of Bronte and Oakville overall. And they really influence how they feel about visiting, whether it's a welcome community, and whether they want to spend their time and money here. While these impacts are not reflected in the report statistics, they remain an important part of understanding its broader impacts. The report does identify more than 600 approved tows during the review period. And while each of these tows might have been operationally justified, they do represent a member of the public that's needed to interact within the system of this bylaw. So tonight, I don't think council has enough complete information at this stage to understand the full impact of a program that's still in a growth phase. And given that continued growth and expectation will not stabilize for another 2 years, maintaining the current approval requirement of this oversight really does remain a prudent approach. And so for that reason, I respectfully ask council to maintain the approval process or refer this matter back to staff to relook at that bylaw. And with that, I thank you for your time and consideration, and I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wilson. Councillor Giddings has something for you. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Thanks for joining us this evening. You talk about the model that is problematic. Is the model the problem, or is it people parking illegally the problem?
Great question. I have to say, I feel like we've done a great education piece in Bronte. It's been over a decades-long issue. We've improved signage. We've improved as much communication as we have. And the experience of people parking in private lots is in fact quite rare, but when you do park in this one particular lot, you're going to be towed. The property lines aren't necessarily clear. I think we can all recognize that sometimes that private parking signage is something we don't even see as we're visiting a community, and mistakes are certainly made. In the event that people are parking in a private lot and quite intentionally walking off, we do feel like the $65 penalty issued by the town of Oakville is a reasonable enforcement measure. I'm certainly not going to make that mistake a second time, and I would arrive at my windshield and think, well, I'll never do that again. But the idea that you've now received a ticket, within a half-hour period, your car is gone. The number we're seeing over and over is $367. It's a trip across town to a dark lot, and really, of course, makes the situation very challenging for people. Imagine if you've got a car seat in your car, and now you have a baby that you have to somehow get to a lot. People with accessibility passes in their windows that have to figure out how to get to Spears Road. So we do feel obviously mistakes are made. If people are parking intentionally, we do feel like that ticket is reasonable, and that hopefully with the motion being brought forward by Councillor McNeice, there can be specific legislation for BIAs that allows a visitor to have a wonderful experience in these communities, and it has a reasonable consequence if they do park in a private lot. Thank you. Sorry, that was very long-winded.
Thank you for the details. So you don't believe the signs are problematic? There are enough signs, they're big enough, they're colorful enough, whatever it takes for them to be noticed. It's not the signs, it's somebody just looking for a quick place to park.
I do feel that way. I mean, we're seeing right now, like I said, my estimation of when I was starting to see emails about towing, it was the beginning of April. So we're looking from April to, I believe, June 15th when this report came through. That's 183 tows. And over the course of that many months, that's actually not a lot of people parking illegally, but that's a lot. That's a big consequence and a big, at the high cost people are paying to come and visit Bronte.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Councillor McNeice.
Thank you, through your worship. So just to clarify, there used to be more sites that would tow in Bronte, I guess up until the original bylaw in 2024, is that correct?
That's right. We really saw two primary lots doing the towing.
And then I guess a third prior to that.
You're right. That feels like a distant memory, but you're right. There was a third. That was before my time.
So it's down to one. The other two seem to be managing their parking fine, as far as you're aware?
They seem to be managing it fine. That's right.
And you mentioned, one lot that particularly seems to have some lot line issues or some confusion around it that has been ongoing for a decade or so.
So I give people grace when they do park in this lot and make that mistake because it is a property that has businesses along Lakeshore and along Marine Drive. It's a big lot, and again, there's commercial properties all around this space. So I do believe when you're walking across the street to visit a business, you're walking off the lot. But for a lot of the properties that are adjacent, you wouldn't necessarily realize that there is a property line that you've crossed.
Okay, so you feel that the aggressive enforcement on that site hurts not just the neighboring properties, but the whole BIA district that everybody pays into, has a common mission to add value to the district, invite visitors to the area. You feel that hurts the whole district?
That's right. I feel like I'm in a unique position, and I try and choose my words carefully when I'm up here because we know the funding model of a BIA. This is a property within our BIA, and we obviously choose, we want to support all of our members. But in this case, where we do have 175 businesses and one property owner is making it very challenging for us to create that welcoming, vibrant environment when so many people are leaving with an experience that likely means they won't come back to our community. So for one property to have that impact on the whole community, that's why we speak out about it today.
And all of the businesses that pay into it subscribe to the mission to shop more, stay longer, enjoy the district. Is that fair to say?
That's right. We're trying to create that welcoming environment, and we certainly want to respect the rights of private property owners, but we do feel, as I keep mentioning up here, that there should be a reasonableness to that, and that we feel if there's a chance that BIAs could get special consideration, so we're able to create that welcoming environment without the constant threat of towing that would drastically change things for Bronte.
Okay, and one final question. So you're a part of the Ontario BIA Association, I understand. And have you heard of any other BIAs having a challenge like this across Ontario, or is this sort of unique to Oakville?
This is definitely unique to Bronte, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Wiley, Councillor O'Meara has a question for you.
Oh, dear. Sorry.
Thanks, Kylie. Are you aware of, so I guess our goal is to have people park in the appropriate places. Are you aware of anything that the property manager or the property owner has done physically to their property to try and support their businesses and the people parking in the appropriate stuff? Has the property owner or property management company spent any money or done anything to their property to try and elucidate the fact that people shouldn't leave the property?
Not to my knowledge, but I know that they have abided by the signage that's been required.
Right. And
Yeah.
do we know, does the tow company pay for that signage or does the property owner? That might be
I
a question
believe
for
it's the
staff.
property owner.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming in your delegation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Ms. Wiley. Mr. Clerk, the next delegation.
Harry Shea.
Mr. Shea, welcome, live and in person. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. I mean, my presentation is based on the staff report, but based on what I heard from Councilor McNeese, I think what you'll hear is, supports it, and I think that motion is solid. The BVRA supported Council's bylaw 2024 in 187 as it was the right thing to do. It protected visitors to Bronte from predatory towing. This report doesn't solve the parking problem, rather it allows for more towing as it removes an important safeguard for the vehicle owners. Tonight, I want to speak to the proposed bylaw amendment 2026-092 and the conclusions that this report draws in support of it. Next slide, please. What the staff report doesn't address is our local economy. Summer is almost here. Lake Notes, OWO, multiple festivals, yesterday's first annual 5K run, which I ran in. Throughout the summer, these events will bring tourists to Bronte's waterfront. They're coming to hopefully spend money at Bronte's local shops, eat at the restaurants, and enjoy the lake. Now ask yourself, what is the single fastest way to ensure a family never returns to Bronte? Tow their car while they're having lunch, dinner, or shopping. Predatory towing, or even the perception that a vehicle can be removed without meaningful independent oversight, is a direct threat to that visitor experience. Predatory towing simply says, come to Bronte at your own risk. And yet this amendment proposes to remove the one step in the process that provides an independent check on that outcome. Next slide, please. Let me be specific about what the amendment actually does. Currently, before a municipal law enforcement officer can authorize a tow, they must first obtain approval from a mobile compliance officer who's an actual town employee. The MCO reviews the photographs, confirms a real violation has occurred, and then approves or denies the tow. That step exists for a reason. It puts a qualified, accountable public servant in the decision chain before someone loses their vehicle. The proposed amendment replaces that approval requirement with a simple notification. That is a significant reduction in consumer protection, and it deserves far more scrutiny than this report provides. Next slide, please. Now let's look at the data being used to justify this change. The report cites a denial rate of approximately 1.3, or only 11 of 820 tow requests were denied as evidence that the MCO oversight is unnecessary. But I would ask council to consider what that number actually tells us. Does a low denial rate mean the oversight is redundant, Or does it mean that the oversight is working, that the MLEOs, knowing their requests will be reviewed, are submitting well-documented, legitimate tow requests? These are not the same conclusion, and the report does not attempt to distinguish between them. The deterrent effect of a review process cannot be measured by counting the times it catches a problem. It must also account for the problems that never arose because the review process existed. When you remove the approval requirement, you remove that deterrent. The report offers no analysis of what happens next, and critically, it offers no analysis of what happens to the businesses whose customers are on the receiving end of an unreviewed tow. Next slide, please. Let me also speak briefly to the complaint data. The report notes that only 2 service requests were received regarding the MLEO conduct during the entire reporting period. Staff cites this as evidence that the MLEOs are reliable. But how easy is it for a visitor from Burlington, Hamilton, or even Toronto to navigate a complaint process about the Oakville MLEO? The report does not tell us. It does not tell us whether the complaint process is well publicized, whether it's accessible to people who do not know the local regulatory structure, or what the outcome of those 2 complaints actually was. 2 complaints is not necessarily a clean bill of health. It may simply reflect that most people who get towed while visiting an area they don't live in give up, go home, than rather pursue a formal complaint. Next slide, please. So why are we here tonight? Bylaw 2024-187 was passed because Bronte had a well-documented predatory towing problem. The towing sector responded to Council's new rules, not by reforming, but by switching to vehicle booting. This was a workaround Council had to address with a second bylaw in 2025. That is not the behavior of a sector that has fundamentally changed. It's a sector that continues to look for ways around consumer protection. Council built this oversight structure because it was needed. Removing a key element of it after just 1 year in the middle of summer is premature and it's risky. And the people who will bear that risk most acutely are not only the visitors who come to enjoy our waterfront, but the local businesses who depend on them as well. Next slide, please. Now let's consider the retail and tourism context specifically. Summer days and especially weekends in Bronte bring parking challenges unlike anywhere else in this town. Our Bronte retailers and restaurants are already working with a handicap. These Bronte businesses have no municipal parking infrastructure to point customers toward, like Kerr Village or downtown Oakville. Street parking is limited and goes quickly. What remains are privately owned retail lots watching every vehicle that pulls in. That is the environment our visitors are navigating when they come to enjoy our waterfront. And unfortunately, folks from Mississauga, Burlington, or beyond do not know which lots belong to which stores. They don't always see or understand the signage. They park where they can find a space. They head toward a restaurant or a shop. That is a completely reasonable thing to do. Under this amendment, it would cost them hundreds of dollars and ruin their entire day. Next slide, please. And finally, I ask Council our ask of Council is straightforward. Our request is not to pass tonight bylaw 2026-092, rather receive the staff report for information, but to defer the amendment. And then just one additional closing thought. Our retailers and restaurants deserve to know that the town is not creating conditions that will drive their customers away. That protection is worth preserving. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Councillor McNeice has a question for you.
Thank you, Worship. Just a quick question. Thank you for your delegation, Mr. Shea. Seeing you're representing the Residents Association and certainly know the area, do you feel is it local residents that are getting towed, or is it mostly visitors, tourists, people that maybe don't understand the area as well as locals?
It's the latter. I mean, we have received during this predatory towing process complaints. Most of them are not from, I mean, they're not members, but there are folks that are from outside the area. I mean, I personally have driven people to the pond who are from Port Credit or from Toronto. So.
And the sentiment is that this doesn't happen in other areas, and they're likely not returning to
Correct.
your area? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Councillor McNeice, we're at decision time. Councillor O'Meara, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I'll speak to the motion as well, Your Worship. Thank you very much. And again, I had mentioned in my question to Kylie, the goal here is to have people park in the appropriate place. And this is now 10 years where towing, we haven't towed our way to change the culture. It's not working. It does not work. And what it does is it creates an environment that creates a lot of animosity towards not just Bronte or a hospital, but the town of Oakville in general. The BIAs and the separation of the BIAs is important because there is an invitation to egress to conduct commercial and retail business in BIA areas. Imagine downtown Oakville, every store you went to, you had to get out and move your car to go somewhere else because you weren't allowed to stay there. I mean, that is what basically is happening in Bronte Village. There is an intuitive sort of feel to just step over a curb and walk somewhere when you don't know that means now it's going to cost you $400. And as we grow in our vibrancy in this town and as we have more tourism, and on Father's Day, as Harry mentioned, it was packed down in Bronte, thousands of people on the street, and many newcomers, and they don't know that this is happening. So it is unfortunate that it was a tiny, tiny, small number of individuals who are doing this. The majority of the tow industry I talk to say we wouldn't touch this business with a 10-foot pole because it's not good business. It's not what it's not who we are, and it's not what we do. But unfortunately, as long as we have actors that are willing to do this, we have got to continue to evolve. And I appreciate that staff want to review this and are working with us to get it right. Because again, we want people to maintain their property rights, but in the same sense, you have to understand that we are in a business area and we're all in this together. And I understand that there's a lesson there that has to happen, but we need to look at all the options. In Ottawa, what they do, in Toronto, what they do, in other areas, what they do to try and limit this. Because as Kylie mentioned, we are one of the highest tow zones per capita in this province. And it's basically 2 properties. And that is not changing the culture anytime soon. So we have to continue to go at this until we get it right. So definitely want to thank Councillor McNeice and Councillor Longo for doing yeoman's work on this one as well. So thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McNeice.
Thank you, Your Worship. Agree with Councillor O'Meara's comments there. I mean, the intention, I think, originally of this was not how do we make towing more efficiently or how do we do more towing. It's how do we deal with some unique situations across the town related to parking. So I think the immediate need is in our BIA areas that, as we heard, are facing some unique challenges right away, but we also have some other unique contexts across town, and those were highlighted in part 2 of the refer back, around institutions. There's a spillover effect, and we're not the only people that deal with it, sometimes around places of worship, so we need to be able to address those different contexts. And certainly the charts in the report, told quite a bit that, and the additional information we have, that 99% of property owners are figuring out how to manage their property and their parking effectively. It is a small number that are just trying to tow their way out of this, and they're using that as the solution and not, as Councillor Mera suggested, what additional measures are they taking beyond what we're absolutely making them do. And you see that in Mississauga around Square One. They have parking ambassadors to try to help people out and not try to prey on them and tow them away for a profit. So I think there's a lot to look into related to transparency, especially at high volume sites. Most people don't realize that there's active enforcement going on. When we launched the ASE speed cameras, when the cameras are on, there was a different sign that showed up that said it's going on right now, because we don't really want to give you a ticket. We want you to comply. And we especially don't really want to tow you away. We want you to comply. So the more we can do in a preventative lens, the better. And we're realizing through the information we've gathered in the last year, there's certainly different contexts across town, and we may need a few different approaches to deal with this. And as Councillor Mera mentioned and Mr. Shea mentioned, consumer protections, Ottawa's really taken an approach around that, in that you don't get towed, and they're looking for repeat offenders for such a harsh consequence of towing, because you originally think your car has gotten stolen. That's your first thought, and that's a traumatizing experience. So they'll give you a tow, or they'll give you a ticket the first 2 times. The third time, I think we'd all agree a tow is deserving. So we need to know more about, in which situations is that appropriate. And I think we've also discovered there's some more information we need in performance measures around this, and potentially technologies that are needed so that we can do things like that. So there's 2 parts of this refer back. There's an immediate need that we think we can address in a few weeks, but there's also, and that was the purpose of getting this 1-year check-in, was let's get really good information and really understand what's going on across town. And I think we've done that, and that's raised a lot more questions. But as Councillor Mara said, we weren't. The whole purpose of this was not to tow our way out of a problem. It was to address some unique parking needs and have towing as a last resort, but to really address these complex parking challenges that we're facing in a few areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McNeice. I hope you're not suggesting that we, the town, are towing. The private property owners are towing.
The town is a very small percentage of that, but this is generally private property owners. You're correct, yes.
Our bylaw exists to restrain private property owners as much as we can from towing. That's our purpose of our bylaw. And I take your point that we're looking to restrain them more, but I just don't want people coming away from this thinking that the town is the one that's doing the towing.
Correct. You're correct.
Councillor Adams?
Thank you very much. First of all, I just wanted to thank Councillor McNeice for the discussions that we had over this. I appreciate all the detail that we have got into this motion. It's very appropriate. I just had a question for our staff about the information that we received around the number of tows at different locations, and whether that information is information that we can be public about in terms of the addresses involved and the number of tow requests coming out of them. Because it was shocking to me when I saw the top locations for tow approval requests, and that we've got 2 of them that account for the vast majority of the tow requests.
Through you, Mayor Burton. Councillor, no, we have not made those records public, and they're going to remain private at the time. But at this time, we can release the total numbers to the public.
I think that would be really useful for the public to understand that we have a certain number of tow requests that are coming out, but 2 properties are accounting for almost all of them. Like a ridiculous number of them, and one of them's across from the hospital, and the other one's in Bronte, and so the public ought to be aware of the fact that there are these 2 locations that if you're going to them, you're probably going to get towed right now. So,
Councillor, I think it'd be fair and no problem if you were to mention that the site across from the hospital has maybe 3 times as many as the property in Bronte.
It's a ridiculous number.
Okay, so if you're out going to the hospital, be careful where you park. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Through Mayor Burton. Yeah, and I do want to emphasize that one parking spot. You drive up there every day, 3rd line and upper middle, and you'll see the people parking their cars and walking across the street. The town has done a good job of ensuring the owner there has got adequate signage up, and they've had to hire a person because the tenants there's no parking for anybody to go in to buy anything from the tenants, because so many people are trying to save the $20.25 it costs if you stay the full day at the hospital. So it is a huge issue for the owner of that plaza. I totally get it. You drive by there every day, you'll see the people. I'm sure they're new people. They may not live in Oakville, but it's a huge issue for the plaza tenants up there. Thank you.
Thank you for mentioning them. Many of them are also residents of Oakville. Well, are we ready to vote then, Council? No hands? Might be vote time. Mr. Clerk, I'd like a recorded vote on this, so could you please call the vote?
Councillor O'Meara,
Yes.
Councillor McNeese,
Yes.
Councillor Duddick,
Yes.
Councillor Chisholm,
Yes.
Councillor Hazlet-Thiel,
Yes.
Councillor Giddings,
Yes.
Councillor Elger,
Yes.
Councillor Longo,
Yes.
Mayor Burton,
Yes.
Councillor Grant,
Yes.
Councillor Adams,
Yes?
Councillor Luchina,
Yes.
Councillor Nanda,
Yes.
Councillor Shi,
Yes.
carries.
Thank you, everybody. That is also unanimous. So now, you've been going, by my estimate, an hour and a half. I believe there's a public health requirement that I give you a break every now and then. Would you like to resume at 10 minutes after? We're in recess.
Recording stopped.
All right, council is back in session. I'll try to bring the meeting to order. The chair is going to recognize Councillor Duddick for a motion on 12.1. And a seconder, please, somewhere. Councillor Chisholm. Is there any objection? Mr. Clerk, there being no objection, that is carried. I'm recognizing Councillor Chisholm for 11.4.
I move that motion, please.
And I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Luchina, thank you. Any objection? Councillor O'Meara.
Just a question, Your Worship, on this one. Thank you. I'm just, the region went through quite a tumultuous time with its heritage archives and what it was going to do, and there was a conversation about it would be sort of getting the archives down to the lower tier municipalities and work at that. And I'm just wondering how the plan, I didn't read how in our strategic plan we're going to be working with the region on that. We're going to be getting resources with them. We're going to be accommodating what's coming. We're going to be anything with that. So I'm wondering if maybe staff can speak to what the plan is coming up to work with the region as it, I believe it's dispossessing, or I forget the term, of its disbursement of its heritage stuff.
While staff is coming, Councillor, let me remind you that regional staff also reported that the vast majority, the huge majority, was all Milton material.
Hi, through the mayor to Councillor O'Meara. If I could just clarify the question one more time, you're looking to understand the work that's happening with the region in terms of deaccessioning. Is that correct?
Deaccessioning, that's the word.
Yeah,
Thank you very
okay.
much for that one. Yeah, I knew it was something. It is, and I know we heard from the Oakville Historical Society, from the Bronte Historical Society, saying there's a need for us to make sure that all of the Oakville stuff there is going to be accounted for and taken care of, and resources and support and all that sort of stuff. And I just was wondering where we are on that, or if that's going to factor into our strat plan.
Absolutely. It's a consideration for sure. There's work underway. We have representation from the town. Our staff team are sitting on that project team to deaccession with the region. There's nothing decided just yet. However, our interest would be in those items and artifacts that are significant to Oakville's heritage. And we would be prioritizing that.
Okay, yeah, just as long as that factors into our plan, because I don't want that to be an afterthought, because I know a lot of our historical groups in Oakville are very, very concerned about this and that whole process. And I said that we would do everything we could as a municipality here to make sure the Oakville stuff that we have is protected.
You won't necessarily see it specifically called out in the strategic plan because there's so many unknowns at this time, but it's certainly something that the staff would continue to work through.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hazlet-Thiel, and then Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, and thank you for a very comprehensive report and an excellent engagement process. I had the opportunity to hop in on an early session, and I know people were very much engaged in wanting to share their thoughts on the museum. My question is a bit self-serving. I'll say it right up front. You have a strategic plan that looks out to 2030, and we have a potential historical building that may someday have opportunities in it. Is there a consideration that exhibitions or elements of what the museum needs to fulfill their place and continue to be that exceptional steward of heritage, is there an opportunity for discussion with them being involved at the old OT?
Through the mayor to Councillor Haslett-Thiel, certainly something that we could take a look at. Hadn't necessarily been contemplated for the old high school at this time. What's called for in the strategic plan is for us to bleed the museum out into the community. Maybe that's the wrong term, but really to expand our reach into the community, which was more with temporary installations. It's something we'd have to explore further in terms of whether the old high school would be suitable and whether or not we have staff capacity and resources to be able to support, depending on the size and scale of something like that.
But a small portion, possibly. A puzzle can become filled up by all those pieces. So I've planted the seed, and I hope you'll consider it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a question. I thought this would be a consent item and it would be approved very quickly, as I know that the staff and the finances are all in place for the strat plan, which I'm really impressed with. And hi, Carolyn, and our museum people with respect to what they do down there. And it's a museum that is well established in our municipality, but it's hidden down at the end of Navy Street, and it's always difficult getting people down there. But with the lakefront and so forth, and our foot traffic has increased, and my congratulations to staff over the years. We've been really moving. We got rid of the old wall and put a knee wall in, and we did the coach house. So there's been a lot of improvements at the museum, and also now on Facebook, I see a lot of the exhibits are in there. Fantastic. Now, with respect to the collection, is there anything stored?
Did you have
Is anything
a reason for putting that after this?
Your Worship, I can hear you. That's okay. With respect to the collection, not decommissioned or deaccession, do we have storage at QEPCC still with all our collection?
Through the mayor to Councillor Chisholm, we do have climate-controlled storage space at QEPCC that's specifically for museum artifacts. I have heard from the team too that we do an incredible job at keeping our collection accessible and out for the public to see, so that there's a lot more engagement. We try not to hide as much as we can, but there is certainly storage at QEP.
Yeah, I must say over the years we've improved our exhibits to the community instead of having it hermetically sealed and hidden away for many years. It's good to get out and get fresh air and oxygen in our exhibits. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Adams?
Thanks very much. On the same item, I wondered if you would be able to define or explain a little bit better how the history of North Oakville will be told through the museum.
Excellent.
I think that's something that has been missing from a lot of the work that's done in the past, and it's something that, given the growth of North Oakville, is desperately needed.
Through the mayor to Councillor Adams, I'm hoping that you will see that reflected in the plan. Part of what's been identified is the opportunities to tell new and different stories as well, and to expand into the north part of Oakville. Some of the locations do. A 60 Mile has a dedicated exhibition space as well, but that's certainly something that we're hoping to expand on, telling the story of the town as a whole.
Thank you very much for that.
And next, Councillor Nanda.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. Thank you, and thank you for the strat plan. Just to kind of piggyback on what Councillor Adams was saying, I do appreciate the piece, the cultural piece, and it was great to see that, because that will represent more of the North, as we know. So one of the things I saw is you had the cultural anchor in 2030. Are you working with any cultural groups specifically to get anything into the museum earlier than 2030?
I'm going to bring Carly Anderson, our Senior Manager of Cultural Services, forward to speak to that question.
So thanks for the question. So we engage with over 50 community partners and organizations which are listed in the plan, who all really form an integral part of the museum and the exhibitions. And our goal is to really transform it into a cultural anchor by the conclusion of this strategic plan. So what we mean by that is the work that we're going to be doing in the near term is to help foster belonging, identity, learning, and community connection. And for residents, this means a museum that not only preserves Oakville's heritage, but actively engages people through its exhibitions, programs, events, partnerships and storytelling that reflect Oakville's evolving history and diverse experiences. So it's kind of the conclusion of this plan will see it really become a cultural anchor. So it's kind of the trajectory we'll be on.
So that's great to hear. And I have been to the museum, just taking my kids when they were younger, but also going on a class trip. So it's been great to see that. So also in the cultural part, I thought it would be great to maybe work with school boards and see, how they have those cultural pieces within the school, and that education piece can also come down through exhibitions, like you said yourself. Because I do recall going down there, and it isn't big. It's very cute. It's very small. So obviously, you wouldn't be able to permanently get everything in there, but a dedicated space that allows for different exhibitions and different cultures to be able to come in. But I did also read there's staffing issues, of course. And so what kind of capacity can you handle? Because it looks like you do want more people to come to the museum, but based on the staff capacity, what kind of capacity can you handle in the museum?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So through the mayor, we have developed a plan with the resources that we have at hand. So we are already, as you'll see, already accomplishing some of the strategic objectives in the plan, and we feel confident that we'll be able to drive it forward with the resources that we have in place. In terms of growth and strategic direction in the future, we will bring potentially forward additional requests for funding through the business case and planning process through the budget.
Okay, great. And I think, obviously trying to get more people in the north to come down there to recognize it, because not everyone knows it is a museum. So maybe signage up there, or a little bit, of course, we can put it out ourselves too, but we'd love to have more people come down there. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elgar.
Mayor Burton, through, I just want to say thank you to the committee. I think a lot of people don't realize what the Oakville Museum does behind the scenes. I know one of the people is Chris Selman, who is working on the 2027 alignment with the 200th anniversary of Oakville. And one of the big things he's going to be doing is a big issue, or a big exhibit on Oakville's trees, especially the great white oak and a number of other trees. And I think we need that kind of thing in Oakville. It's really glad to see he's reached out, and I can tell you he's going to get a bag box full of material pretty soon from me. So thank you for what you're doing at the museum, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. May I put the vote? Any objection to the motion? Mr. Clerk, there being no objection, that's adopted. All right, Council, let's turn our attention now to the 2027 budget forecast. It's a timely topic, and we have a staff presentation. And I'm gonna ask the CAO, because ultimately, the budget is this business is honchoed by the CAO. Madam CAO, do you want to introduce anybody or call our attention to anything in particular?
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Actually, I do want to introduce Jonathan Vanderheiden. I forgot your last name for a minute, Jonathan, as he's going to provide the overview of the budget forecast based on the 26 work that we had done earlier or later part of last year, and really some of the challenges that we'll have going forward into the next year. So over to Jonathan.
Jonathan, we look forward to your presentation. I read this morning that inflation was up to 3.2%, which is probably causing all kinds of headaches everywhere, not just here.
That's true, Mayor Burton. And thank you for having me to address council and the public this evening as we give you a brief update on our 2027 budget forecast. I think just a few weeks ago we were in front of you as well to finalize the 2025 year end, and now here we are just a couple weeks later to talk about 2027. That's the way it works in finance sometimes. My presentation this evening won't be long. However, there are a number of key items that we want to bring to your attention as we do dive into the budget process for this year. All right, we'll start by taking a look at the 2027 forecasted operating budget increase, including some of the key preliminary assumptions that we've included. Then I'll spend a minute or two on our 2027 to 2036 capital forecast. Then we'll look at the council's strategic plan and how that's incorporated into our budget documents and our budget process. I'll run through some key budget principles and financing policies that we use here at the town, just as a reminder for council and for the public. And then we'll end by taking a brief look at inflation and talking a little bit more about the budget process and timelines. They are a little bit different this year with the election. So starting off with the 2027 forecasted increase. So we have on screen chart 1 from the staff report. And this is the same chart that we show you every year as part of the budget process. And I know that it has a lot of numbers on it, but it does highlight the key drivers that have an impact on the town's operating budget and ultimately impacts how much residents pay in taxes. So the process that we use each year is to start with the forecasted amounts from the previous year's budget and then update it for things that we know about. And I'll walk you through a couple of those items now. So to start with, our first driver is inflationary impacts. This is where we incorporate the impacts of inflation on both our costs and on our revenues. The town's single largest expense in our operating budget is for personnel costs, and so our updated figures here include increases for negotiated and expected labor contracts. For a bit of extra detail, I can share that we also have included in this line inflationary pressures on various materials, supplies, and contracted services, as well as debt charges for the transit facility expansion. The next line up is called capital and growth, and each year we have operating impacts due to new growth, as well as impacts due to capital projects that have an operating component to them. So for 2027, this is a significant driver as we have operating costs for transit expansion buses and higher transfers to the transit equipment reserve for electric buses. We have operating costs to maintain new roads, parks, trails, and subdivisions, transfers to various other equipment reserves and our building maintenance reserve for the new 16-mile community center. And we have licensing and software as a service costs and for other various ITS initiatives. The third line down is called Council Strategic Priorities. And this refers to some of the business cases that were identified in the 2026 budget process that were put in there to address some of Council's strat plan priorities. As not all requests could be accommodated last year, a number of these items were deferred to 2027. These business cases will all be reviewed again this year as part of the budget process to ensure the various initiatives are prioritized. The fourth line down is called annualization of items approved in prior years, which is a bit of a mouthful. But this line refers to the remaining impact of items that were added in last year's budget. So as a reminder, some of the items that we add to the budget are not fully realized in the year, and the remaining impact is then pushed out into the next year. So for example, a position may have been added to the budget that only starts partway through the year, and so the next year has to pick up the remaining impact of that addition. In the 2026 budget, positions were added to both maintain the same level of service and to address some corporate objectives, and this figure represents the remaining impact of those additions. The fifth line down is called Oakville Public Library, and the figure listed here represents their forecasted tax impact, which includes the remaining budget impacts for the opening of 16 Mile. Our sixth line down is actually a negative, and that indicates that it's additional revenue coming into the budget to help reduce the impact of the tax levy. Growth in our assessment never perfectly matches the timing of our increase in costs. However, we do try as much as possible to match them to avoid fluctuations in our tax levy increase. In previous years, we have had some extra growth that was not needed, and therefore we saved it for when we knew there would be operating impacts, specifically the opening of 16 Mile and adding more buses for transit. And this helps to soften the blow of adding all the new operating costs in one year. And finally, the last item in this first part of the chart is called our capital levy, which is set at 1.75% in this document. We've had the annual capital levy consistently for many years, and it's vital to supporting our asset management plan to ensure that we have a reliable funding source for our capital program. As noted in the staff report, the capital levy has typically been about 1% as an increase each year since 1996. However, the 2026 budget included a $10 million reduction to the capital levy based on what the town has historically spent on stormwater. And this was done as council also approved the move of stormwater costs from the tax levy to a dedicated stormwater fee. As there continues to be pressures on our capital program beyond stormwater, a temporary increase in the capital levy from 1% to 1.75% annually for 2026 all the way to 2030 has been implemented. So next, I'd like to say a couple things about assessment growth, which is the next line down. So assessment growth reflects the additional properties that are added to the tax roll each year, which were not included in the prior year's budget. This is a regular budget driver, though the amount does fluctuate depending on the information we receive from MPAC. So as you can see, this item is a negative, which means it reduces the overall tax impact to existing residents. And we've currently estimated at 1%, but as we move through the budget process, we will keep council and the public advised of any changes based on information that we receive from MPAC. And before I leave assessment growth, I do have to say one thing. The province has continued to delay the reassessment of properties. So we're still working on values from 2016. If the province finally does update the assessment of properties, this will not result in true assessment growth to any municipality. It just changes how the pie is divided. There's often a misconception out there that as soon as municipalities get a reassessment, there'll be tons of millions of dollars in tax revenue coming in, but that's actually not true. So I always like to take the opportunity to dispel that myth if I can. So after all the items that are listed here, and after adding the expected increases that we have for the region and for education, the forecasted impact for this year is 4.97%. And I'd also like to point out that this does include the remaining $200,000 of savings that we were asked to find like a couple of council terms ago, spread out over the 26 and 27 budgets. So we have incorporated that extra $200,000 as staff have been working on a number of initiatives, including reviewing areas of budget efficiency. And we'll be sure to report back on those in the commissioner presentations in the fall. All right, also included on tonight's agenda is a draft direction from the mayor that the overall increase be kept to forecast inflation, which is currently 2.1%, which you see in the bottom right corner as well on this chart. So this is chart 2 from the staff presentation. So should the request be for staff to come in at 2.1% overall instead of 4.97, the town's tax levy would actually be a decrease. And so compared to the previous slide that I just showed you, $17.3 million would need to be reduced from these figures, along with the deferral of $2.1 million in initiatives that were deferred from last year's budget. So to accomplish this, staff will need to present to council options for changes in services or service levels that council could consider in order to achieve the target. Keeping in mind the importance of balancing the tax increase with the needs that are identified in our master plans and other key strategic priorities. So now we'll move from the operating budget to the capital forecast for a moment, talk about that as well. So each year the town prepares a 10-year capital forecast as part of our budget process. And this provides a look ahead to the upcoming projects that we expect to undertake. This is a critical part of long-range financial planning as we need to know both our objectives and our pressures so that we can make appropriate decisions for the benefit of the town. So this involves us looking at the amounts, the timing, and the operating impacts of the various projects. And one key item to assist us in doing this is our asset management plan. The asset management team works closely with both the finance team and the various departments to ensure that the infrastructure renewal projects are included based on the principles laid out in our asset management plan. These infrastructure renewal projects include things like replacing roads, HVAC units, and equipment. And later this summer, the asset management team will bring forward the final phase of our asset management plan with a focus on the levels of service and financing those levels of service. This report will highlight the current state of the program, which is generally strong. However, it will also identify the key drivers of our assets that are putting financial pressure on our capital reserve. And in a slide or two, I do have our capital reserve forecast to show you as well. Another key variable for our capital budget is related to the impacts of growth. Oakville is a growing municipality and we need to add projects, things like new community centers and fire halls, as well as road widening projects, so that we can ensure that our residents are provided with the services that we provide. Including projects in the forecast is based off of our DC study, which is currently underway, and that is in turn driven by our master plans. So in the past few years, council has approved the fire master plan, the Parks, Recreation, and Library Master Plan, and the Transportation Master Plan. And components of these plans will be included in our 10-year forecast. Finally, any other requests, those we call program initiatives, are evaluated and prioritized based on Council's strategic plan and other corporate priorities. All of these various capital projects are also considered against the funding sources that are available to pay for them to ensure that we are using the town's financial resources appropriately. So as I mentioned, I do have a slide outlining the town's capital reserve. So the capital levy and the capital reserve are the primary funding sources for our infrastructure renewal and program initiative projects. And they also fund the town share of our growth projects. So the blue line that you see on the chart here represents the projected capital reserve balance for each year in our 10-year capital forecast. The orange bars indicate how much spending is expected in each year. And as you can see, we are currently in a strong position. And this is the result of the implementation of this new stormwater fee, additional grant funding, reallocations from reserves above target levels, investment income, and town surpluses. Having said that, as you'll see further out in the forecast, that number begins to decrease and ends up dropping below the dotted red line, which represents our target balance for our capital reserve. And again, the upcoming asset management plan will highlight some of these drivers at a meeting later this summer. I'd also like to say that during the 2026 budget, Council approved the additional increases to the capital levy to maintain a positive balance in the reserve. That's the 1.75% I mentioned earlier. And so this slide highlights the importance of maintaining the capital levy as capital funding is constrained and projects do need to be prioritized accordingly. All right, switching gears slightly, I've got a slide here on Council's strategic plan, which I know you're very familiar with. And so this is an important factor in how we build out our budget. We actually group the budget book by components of the town's or the council's strategic plan. And we want to make sure that we are aligned with the key areas of focus that you see here on the screen and the consideration of the objectives and action items that are included in the strategic plan. While the current council strategic plan wraps up this year, the priorities and frameworks still guide how we build our budget for 2027. Once the new council starts later this year, it will likely develop a new strategic plan that would then become the framework for future budgets. This next slide here outlines some of the key principles and financing policies that we follow here at the town to help us ensure financial stability. They are all listed in the staff report, so I won't spend too much time on them here, but I do want to highlight that they involve us considering the long-term impact of our projects and initiatives and considering what those impacts are on current and future budgets. And then the slide on inflation, which Mayor Burton mentioned just as I started. This slide shows the current economic situation, or a portion of the current economic situation that we're in, and how it relates to our budget. As you're all aware, inflation has been on a bit of a roller coaster the past few years, and you can see that with the dashed line that is on the chart here. It spiked very high in 2022 and has been decreasing since then. And so while we're glad that it's stabilizing, there is still some uncertainty in the core inflation numbers, as evidenced by the results that came out today, where inflation is sitting just over 3%. This chart also has the town's overall tax bill increase on it. That's the line you see in blue. And you'll see that generally speaking, we stay pretty close to inflation, sometimes lagging a little bit, but we generally try to stay close to that. All right, that brings me to the 2027 budget process itself. So the process for this year will be very similar to the ones we've done in the past under strong mayor powers. However, because of the timing of the election and some of the requirements in the Municipal Act in an election year, we do have a few changes in this year's process. So this chart, which is also Appendix A in the staff report, outlines a simplistic timeline that we are planning to follow this year, subject to any changes based on the conversations today. So I'll walk you through a couple of items here quickly. I just want to flag as I do, items with that gold bar around them, or gold border around them, I should say. Those represent public consultation, which I know is something that is important to council. So June 22nd, that's today. This is the budget forecast report and serves as our external budget kickoff. Staff have already started working on the budget internally at the same time. And then from here, the next box actually jumps all the way past the election. So after the election, the mayor will be able to establish a 2027 budget committee. And then on November 24th and 26th, we plan to have budget committee meetings where we as staff have an opportunity to present a staff-prepared budget to the budget committee and the public. The presentation on these days will include the regular budget overview as well as our commissioner presentations. From here, we move into a couple of months of consultation where budget committee members can consult with residents on the staff-prepared budget. Then if you move to the second row on this chart, you'll see that there is an item with a green border around it for the week of December 7th. And that's something we've added a couple of years ago and has seemed to work well. This is an opportunity during this week where we as staff provide the opportunity to meet with you as council, to come to town hall to chat about any budget-related questions you might have. And we try to schedule these after we've released the budget book for you. We give you a lot of information between the budget book and the presentation, so we want to make sure you have time to digest it all before you ask your questions. And as members of council, you always have the opportunity to ask any questions in a public forum as well. But we really want to give you the opportunity to dive into the details as you consider the budget book and as you engage with your residents on it. And speaking of residents, that leads me to the two meetings on January 12th and 14th. Those will be public meetings where we will have the opportunity to hear from members of the public about the budget and receive their public delegations. This is also an opportunity for you as councilors to ask any questions of staff. And as we've done in the past, we'll make one of these meetings during the day and one in the evening so that we can maximize the attendance from residents as much as possible. Moving to the next box on January 21st, this is an opportunity for staff to respond to any questions from council. And then it's also an opportunity for members of the budget committee to provide recommendations to the mayor for the mayor's budget. And that leads us to January 28th, where there would be a special meeting of council for the mayor to present their budget. And this would be the start of the proverbial clock under strong mayor powers. And we'd also include the town's rates and fees at this meeting as well. On February 4th, there would be a meeting of council to entertain any public delegations on the mayor's budget. And then leading to February 9th, where council would meet to consider the 2027 budget. And I will note that this is less than the 30 days under the legislation. However, just like last year, we'll include a motion to resolve that period at the same time so we can wrap up the budget process as quickly as possible. And that brings me to my final slide for tonight. This is Appendix B from the staff report on today's agenda. This is a budget decision flowchart to assist council and the public in navigating the process of approving the budget based on the province's directives. It's the same information we've provided in the past number of years, and should we end up in a situation where we need to navigate it, we also have the assistance of the town clerk and the town solicitor to assist us to ensure that we follow the legislation properly. So with that, Mayor Burton, that concludes the end of my presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Well, you've generated a few. Councillor Elgar.
Mayor Burton, thank you very much. Jonathan, excellent presentation. But there's one big hole in the budgets that somebody's missing and I can't figure it out. It has something to do with development charges. The Development Charges Act that started in 1997. We're sitting on 2026. And you notice when we talk about budgets, we don't mention how much the residents are subsidizing the development everywhere. And I don't know how people get wakened up to it because it keeps getting buried. And everything you talked about tonight, it's still all buried. And what's the latest how much we are behind on collecting on development charges? Not due to the town at all, but due to the provincial legislation. And I'm talking on the town of Oakville. The region of Halton is a whole other bag of millions of dollars. But going forward, could we kind of throw in how much we are throwing in on an annual basis? And it keeps getting worse. Like every few years, you get another bill through, another act, which means we cannot charge the new developer or the new development at all, and the existing taxpayers are subsidizing. What's the latest number you would have on what we are subsidizing right now, just for the year 2026?
Through you, Mayor Burton. My apologies, Councillor Elgar. I did not think to have that number ready. I should have known that you would ask me. But what I can promise you is that, as we have in prior years, we do have a reserve report that we do bring at the same time as the budget that outlines a lot of the information related to development charges, what we can and cannot collect for, and what we include in the budget to account for that as well. So we'll make sure to have that as part of our budget process this year.
Because we do get something from the CAO on a monthly basis, I do believe. And you know, the number isn't isn't in the tens of thousands, it's in the tens of millions of dollars. You have a ballpark idea what that is right now?
Councillor, the CAO has taken the microphone, and perhaps she can help you.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Burton, the number that we provide you on a monthly basis is the impact of both development charges and the parkland changes, and that was at, I think it was $60 million in total, about that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Closey. Appreciate that. Because people are not aware. I don't care. It comes out to us, but it's not getting anywhere. It's not getting any prime time coverage. So thank you for that. And if we could throw that in, Jonathan, going forward, as you do your presentations, I think it'd be most helpful. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Adams.
Thank you very much for the presentation and the report. I wondered, would you be able to provide us with an extended version of chart 3 that would show the data going back to, say, 2000 or something?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we can certainly provide that chart 3 you said.
That would be great.
Yeah.
If you could provide the data underlying it, that would be helpful as well. And then the second thing I was going to ask you is, within the mayoral direction, there's 1E that reads, progress towards the revitalization of Kerr Village and Bronte Village streetscapes, the Bronte waterfront, the downtown square and library, implementation of the transportation master plan, fire master plan, and other master plans. I wondered if staff would be able to provide a little bit of guidance around how the, in particular, the fire master plan will be handled. It's because it's being named specifically, so things around, say, the staffing ratios, the phasing in of the district chief model, the need for additional fire facility for coverage. I wonder if we could get a little bit of an understanding of how the executive leadership team will respond to that ask.
Through you, Mayor Burton, certainly that's something we can bring back as part of the budget process this year and outline that.
Okay, thank you. So I obviously that's you know, an item that there might be some interest in the audience tonight, and so I think we would benefit from hearing staff's process around how that gets responded to. I think the process is an important piece to understanding this.
Through you, Mayor Burton, we can certainly share a little bit about the process, as well as the fire master plan had a number of action items in it that we consider, and so I'm sure that Commissioner Damaso can add more to that right now, but we can also think about that for the budget process.
So through Mayor Burton to Councillor Adams, we have 11 business cases. Sorry. Apologies. Through you, Mayor Burton, to Councillor Adams, we have 11 business cases that are coming forward from fire that will be reviewed at executive leadership table and considered among all of the other budget requests and needs. And so we'll follow that process and evaluate them according to the resources that are available and prioritize accordingly.
And so those business cases would then become available to council in the new term?
They would be part of the overall package the council would see. And like we do in every budget year, if there are items that are not advanced, council could ask to pull forward some of the unfunded items or unrecommended items as part of the ultimate budget package that council looks to approve.
Thank you. I appreciate you defining that for us. I think it's important for us all to understand how that works.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
Well, first, thanks to Councillor Adams for asking the question I think many people wanted to ask. I have just a follow-up from Councillor Elgar. So on chart 1, every year you do an excellent job of showing us the budget drivers, but is there a line that could go in there that shows you know, the approximate, how much the 60 million impacts the actual tax rate? And I get we're going to get reserves, you're going to give us all of that rich amount, but that chart is one of the more powerful charts, and seeing how the 60 million impacts the tax rate is also beneficial to that education piece that Councillor Elgar so faithfully reminds us of.
Through you, Mayor Burton. So that's certainly something we can put in that reserve report, Councillor Haslett-Thiel, to show what that calculation is. And just for clarity, I believe that 60 million is not an annual number. That's the total number as well, just for clarity on that.
right, well, so
It's still a big number.
Yeah, it's still a big number. The region's got a big number too. My other question is around those that have an interest in understanding the 1.75% capital levy more closely. Where would you direct them to look at that, to understand the investments that are currently either in progress or been deferred and therefore may occur going forward?
So through you, Mayor Burton, I'll do my best to actually answer it now, and then I'll give you a place where you can look. So the capital levy is a huge source of funding for many of our infrastructure renewal projects. It is I don't remember the number now that it changed last year. I used to have it off the top of my head as to how much we contribute each year to putting into our capital reserve to fund all of those projects. The best place to look is when you actually look at our budget documents, there's actually a chart in there that shows the funding for our capital projects. I don't know the page off the top of my head. And it shows the capital levy and the capital reserve as one of our key funding sources for all of those projects. That's the best spot to look to show that investment that we're making in our assets.
So I understand that's where you go to look and see the investment, but the actual projects that are funded, direct the public to where they would look for that.
Certainly. So the other spot to look is we actually post all of our capital projects on our website. It's a big document. It is actually, there's a cover page on it that shows a list of all the projects in our 10-year forecast. And then it's all clickable. If you click on the project you're interested in, it will also show you the funding source. So there's tons of detail about what the project is, what the scope of it is, and what it's being funded by, including the capital levy.
Thank you for always the excellent work.
Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. So just to maybe buttress off of the couple of questions my colleagues have asked, if the development slows down to a pace that we've seen this year, that also has implications for the collection of DCs, which would no doubt expand the gap between what we have in our 10-year list that right now is forecasted to be funded through DCs or through these things. So when we look at a 1% assessment growth that you had indicated, what are our contingencies if we don't see that growth? And then if the gap between what we collect in DCs and the projects we've got going on that require DC fundings, what's our contingencies to make sure that we can still move forward with these projects if houses aren't being continue to not be built at the pace that we've become accustomed to over the past number of years?
Through you, Mayor Burton, there's a couple different parts to that answer, Councillor. So on the DC side, on the contingency side, there's a couple different avenues to keep in mind. So one is, for some of our projects, it's actually the timing of the projects. So if development slows down, you also may not need those projects on as timely a manner. I think our Parks Rec Library Master Plan did a good job of tying the projects to the population that we have. So if you don't get the population, you push out the timing of the projects. That's one tool in our toolbox, if you will. There's a couple of other ones as well. One of the things with DCs, especially on road projects, is their timing, the roads projects are so significant that you often end up collecting ahead of time to build them, or you can issue debt and then collect them as they come in. We're in a position where we don't have too much DC debt, and that puts us in a spot where if that situation were to come up for a short term, we have the ability to issue debt for those projects if we had to. Currently, our roads reserve our roads DC reserve, I should say, is strong, but those funds are all earmarked for projects. I will also say that, but that's another tool we have in our toolbox. In response to your question on if we don't see the increase on the assessment growth side of things, that generally relates to the operating side of things, and so that's actually paying for the grass to be cut at the parks, the roads to be plowed in the winter, those kinds of things. And again, if you don't have the growth in those areas, you don't have the costs that go with them. Ideally, it never matches perfectly, but that's the approach we try to take.
Okay, so not to be doom and gloom, but the two options we have are to projects if we can't afford them, or to use debt to fund it then if we get in trouble.
Through you, Mayor Burton. So those are two of the options. I mean, we also prioritize our projects. We take a look at what we need and when we need it. That's part of the exercise we do each year with the executive leadership team.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship. A couple of questions. First of all, I just want to clarify, what's the timing of the swearing in of the new council? Because I'm looking at this chart, and I'm just trying to understand the dates as it pertains to when the council takes office, the next council takes office.
November 15th.
It's the 15th this time. Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Second question is, what's the assumption around the hydro dividend this year?
Through you, Mayor Burton. So our assumption would be that it would be the same as last year, which I think was 12.2 million. Until told otherwise. I always keep an eye on OEC's charts when they bring them to see if they've raised that number. But that's what we're going with for this year as well.
When do we get confirmation of that?
They usually, it's usually part of our process. I think if I can defer to maybe Jane or Madam CAO or the mayor actually on that, because they sit on that board.
AGM.
The AGM?
Yeah.
There you go.
Didn't we just have that?
That was for this year.
Right, so it's for, right, of course, for 27. Third question is.
I was just going to add, there is a conversation with OEC that happens through it so that we have an understanding, pardon me, for not only this year, but for future years as well. So we have a good dialogue with them through the budget process.
Okay, thank you. The third question I have is the council received a letter on May 28th from the OPFFA, I know there's a few members here, with some concerns that they raised. And I don't think we have a response yet. And I just realized I don't know if staff received a copy of this letter too, but if they haven't, we can forward it. And if you have, will there be a formal response to the letter? Because there's certain budget implications in this letter and concerns raised. So I'd be curious to see what that looks like.
Through you, Mayor Burton, yes, we had received a copy of it. They were gracious enough to send us over a copy. We weren't going to respond to it. We saw it as a response to council in terms of the things that they were looking through the budget process. So we took it as input that we'll consider as we go through the prioritization of projects through the budget process and what we present to council.
So can I take from that you will take into consideration the representations made in this letter in the budgeting process?
Yes, and I think that in the mayor's direction, it requires us to do that because of a lot of it involves the fire master plan and those elements. So certainly we'll be taking them into consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I was surprised actually that there was no applause for Councillor Adams earlier. I took him to be attempting to respond directly to that letter.
I think we probably shared the applause.
And certainly the mayor's direction attempts to do that as well. So are we at decision time, Council? The motion is to receive this information. Councillor Nanda and Councillor Adams, thank you. Any objection? It's received. Thank you, everybody. And that brings us to, I think, our last bit of business tonight, and that is the draft mayoral direction to staff regarding the preparation of the 2027 annual budget. I want to make sure that everybody understands that this item on your agenda tonight is outside of the requirements of Bill 3, the so-called Strong Mayor Act. It's been my custom ever since the province enacted that to seek council endorsement before any item that I'm required to do by way of direction, and I hope that that's appreciated. I have drafted this in consultation with staff, and I've taken into account all the things that I've heard from everyone, and I have three remarks to try to couch it. The first is that the first, perhaps the most important, is we brought in performance budgeting almost 20 years ago, and we are still the only government at any level anywhere in Canada using it. And performance budgeting is the successor or the grandchild of zero-based budgeting, which we all grew up hearing about. And I've made quite a study of budgeting, and I know that zero-based budgeting never worked. And performance budgeting was invented in the early 90s at the city level and in another country to the south of us. And it has the distinction of having been able to work there, and it has done us a lot of good here. When you saw Jonathan's chart comparing tax increases and inflation, performance budgeting is how we've achieved that. We have not fully implemented performance budgeting. Those of us who were here when we introduced it may remember from the presentations at the time that performance budgeting is supposed to have an extra step that we haven't done, and that is to decide how much of something you really want to keep doing, and in fact, what things do you really want to keep doing. And in the financial circumstances that we're in today, it's time to start doing that part of it, which amounts to not just shifting the timing of things, but deciding what the priorities are of things, and what you will do and how much of it you will do, and what you will either do less of or even stop doing. And that's the work that we're going to have to do if we're going to pull $17 million out of the budget in order to hit the CPI target that we're forecasting for next year. Now, forecasts of inflation a year away are, a little bit like trying to forecast the weather in a year. And I will just say that in the United States, which drives much of North American inflation, a lot of things have just been done that are likely to drive inflation higher. And if you, like me, read the New York financial press from time to time to get an idea of what's headed our way, you'll know that between the new head of the Fed and the war in Iran, which I myself don't believe is over, there's a lot of inflationary pressure building up in the North American economic engine, of which we are, for better or for worse, a significant part. And so, if our goal is to not raise taxes more than inflation, and if inflation goes up, you may wind up being able to spend a little more and cut a little less, but that is the wiggle in the forecast that we won't know till we get there. The closer we get there, the better a sense you'll have of it. By the time whoever is here in the next term of council has to wrestle with this, you'll be way lot closer to knowing what inflation's going to be in the year. Jonathan already mentioned, in response to some questions on some other matters, the other key budget tools that we have, which is basically timing and recognition. And then my old favorite, because I started 20 years ago pointing this out to the council of the day, I had a chart of the fee increases for the town services and like recreation and all. It showed over 20 years we had increased the fees, council before me had increased the fees a significantly less amount than inflation, and had increased taxes a significant amount greater than inflation. And I asked at the time, how did you decide to jack the taxes? I mean, many of you were not here then. I'm not talking to you or about you, but in the past, it was easier to raise taxes than it was to raise fees, which I thought was kind of remarkable. And because nobody has to use the facility that you charge the fee for, but everybody has to pay the tax. And the council at the time implemented a program to try to adjust. And it wasn't a perfect adjustment, and we remain committed to subsidizing a lot of our recreation fees for worthy causes and many fine reasons with our taxes. And so that is the other place that you can look, whoever will be here. So with that, I look forward to your questions, comments, and suggestions, and possible endorsement. Councillor Adams, you're next.
Thank you very much. I'll start with giving you an endorsement recommendation to move us forward. But the one thing I think that you missed in your comments was, we have, as a council, for many, many years, looked at the overall tax increase, which this does, and that means that we need to keep an eye on what's happening over at the region of Halton, and of course, the police budget element of that as well, and recognize where it may go, and the opportunities that that presents us with looking for savings and reductions in the overall tax increase. And so while we are obviously looking at the town of Oakville piece of the budgeting here tonight, that's a piece that needs to be continued to be worked on as well.
Thank you for that. I'll just look for a seconder since you gave us a motion. Councillor Knoll, thank you. I will say about the region, over the last, it feels like 3 years, and I'm happy to be corrected if I've got that wrong, we have been, I'll call it, significantly increasing our spending for police. And you will notice that over the last 3 years, as we did that, we tried very hard to pull down what we were doing at the town level to make tax room, as the economists say, for that. I understood the other day at the regional council that we're looking at another fairly significant request for a spending increase from the Halton Regional Police Board. And if the chair of the Halton Regional Police Board would like to confirm or modify that, I'd love to hear it.
Thank you. The increase that we're looking at is what was part of our projection last year. It's exactly the same. We went back to regional council this year and clarified that, so we're not looking for anything above what was predicted. We've projected out 5 years of what our expectations are. The bottom line is that we're playing catch up on our hiring. Technology has increased the cost of policing, and the reality is that we've had increases in criminal activity in the region. Crime has become more complex. Investigations have become more complex. We're playing whack-a-mole with our bail and correctional system with very difficult circumstances. So the cost of policing is quite high, and we see the next at least the next 4 years, 3 to 4 years at minimum, of seeing larger than inflation increases. There's no way around that unless we have a sudden societal decrease in social disorder, et cetera. So I think that we're doing our very best to keep those costs as low as we can. Unfortunately, our suppliers are not helping us keep those costs low. Like the town, we're dealing with costs around a cloud-based or software as a service increases, which are extraordinarily high to us. And of course, the biggest component, like with the municipalities, is our staffing costs. And there's a real demand, and thank you for your support each year for that budget increase. There's a real demand to increase the number of boots on the street. So that's just the reality, unfortunately, of policing. And we don't have a lot of wiggle room. The one piece of really great news I will pass on to everybody on council, and everybody at the region is aware of this, is that we've actually hired a very highly qualified chief financial officer to really do a deep dive on our finances and give us the best possible advice in terms of managing those finances going forward in light of how complex they are becoming. And her work is already well in hand, and we expect to have quite a comprehensive budget conversation leading up to the election for the next council to address in the funding process in 2027.
Thank you for that ray of hope, and I will say this: we have, as a consolation for the increased costs, the fact that Halton is still the safest of the Big 12 police forces. And
we're the safest large municipality in Canada. So it's not just the Big 12. That's a comparator across the country, including, because the Big 12 is of course Ontario. This includes places like Quebec. So you're absolutely right. I won't call it a consolation prize. Our prize at the end of this is the fact that we live in an extraordinarily safe community. We want to keep it that way.
Well, the intent of my remark is to say, at least it's working. Thank you. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Your Worship. So when I see the number 17.3 million needs to be cut, that makes me nervous, because I don't see a long lineup of people telling me we don't need this and we don't need that. We had people coming here today saying there's a heritage school that we need to invest in and protect. There's, calls for more police. These cuts have real meaning to services that people require every day, whether it's increasing the windrow service to seniors or to those who need it. So I'm nervous about where that comes from. I'm nervous that gets put on the slab for that number. I'm nervous that the inflation, as you mentioned, isn't where it is. And when we peg that number right now to 2.1%, that's a number we're going to be held accounted to as inflation rises and goes up. And I think we might be setting an expectation that we're going to have to deliver on, and it's going to mean real service cuts to people. And I just don't get that at the door, that people are sitting going, I can do without the leaf pickup. I can do without, plow my roads at 10 centimeters rather than 7. I mean, I think there are real concerns. We have some people here again who have concerns about what those cuts are going to mean for a variety of services. So I don't have the benefit of having all the conversations that you get to have with staff and with our budget people to bring this number forward to the depth and the level that I think needs to be had at this point, as we're earlier on. But I just wanted to go on the record to saying that's a big number. That is a massive number, 17.3, and people are going to feel this number in a real way. So just want to put that out there and express some concerns I have about what it might take to actually get to that number.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. I welcome that remark. We have all kinds of people in our town believing that we ought to be able to cut taxes, never mind freeze them. And this is a useful conversation to be had so that those voices can learn. Anyone else? Shall I put the vote? Any objection to the direction? Well, it's close. Thank you, everybody. That carries. You have your staff memoranda. Does anyone have any new business to share with your colleagues of a congratulatory or other nature? Councillor Knoll.
Well, we're almost there, folks. We're a couple days away from a fun family community activity. The Oakville Family Rib Fest starts this Friday, and we want to make sure that everybody in Oakville is aware that the Rib Fest is here. As you drive by Sheridan College, you'll see that the tents are starting to sprout, the equipment's starting to arrive, and we are ready to have a wonderful weekend. The weather is looking fantastic, so please, and that includes all the firefighters. The Rib Fest is for you too. We want to make sure that everybody's aware that we're there, and we're going to be raising money for the benefit of local Oakville charities. So please come out, enjoy some ribs or chicken or whatever suits your fancy. Enjoy our wonderful Midway. Meet some local businesses and organizations that will be there, including firefighters, to tell you about their programs and just have a great old Oakville fun time. So the Oakville Family Rib Fest, Sheridan College, Friday through Sunday this coming weekend.
Councillor, you could have been a barker.
He is.
Councillor Chisholm.
He's good at it. Yes, yeah, just my congratulations to the West River Residents Association for their annual picnic at Forester Park on Saturday. It was very successful. The mayor was there, Kathy was there, I was there, and everybody was having a lot of fun. It's a real grassroots type of activity, an event, and everybody knows everybody. It's like a village, a part of Oakville, but it's a village of people that know each other, and they protect each other, and they call each other, and they're all involved. So congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. I, too, I had a wonderful time. Councillor Knoll?
I'm sorry, I have one more. I missed your special event today, so I apologize. And the Barker comment was what triggered this. So on Canada Day, of course, we have our wonderful festival that'll take place in Bronte Village this Canada Day evening. But in the morning, I will be hosting my annual pancake breakfast. So we'll be starting at 8 a.m. on Canada Day, serving pancakes. There'll be live band with Canadian tunes, kids activities, and so much more. It'll be held at the Oak Park Neighborhood Center, 2200 Sawgrass Drive. I think we're on our 9th or 10th year now. It gets bigger every year. We've got extra batter and extra maple syrup. So come on down. It's all free. Have a great time. It's a warm-up act for Bronte later the day. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the maple syrup. Councillor Hazlett-Deal.
Thank you. Mayor Burton, I was remiss in not speaking earlier about Dan Chalikoff's delegation that came in through video, and I just wanted to let council know that we would encourage you to include it in your newsletter, the link, if you wanted to update on what we decided tonight. We certainly will, and we are very grateful that he took the time to create that video and to leave us with John McCrae's words about remembrance. So thank you for indulging me.
Thank you, Councillor. I wonder if it's time to consider and read the bylaws. If so, we need a mover and seconder. Councillor Shia and Councillor Lischina. The bylaws, except for bylaw 2026-092, which has been referred for more work, are now considered read and passed. We have finished the business of the meeting. It's been terrific working with you. I can't wait till we get to do it again. Good night.